So tonight's job, ladies and gents, fix this wheel. Broken spoke today, just let go. Doesn't often happen to me, breaking spokes. This is a Archetype H+ on rim with Sapim CX-ray spokes, and one went pop today on my ride. Right at the end, so it wasn't too bad. I don't, like I said, often get them going wrong because Sapim CX-rays are really good spokes. They're very high fatigue life and a really high grade of steel. But the damage actually happened in this wheel about 6 months ago when my chain snapped and the derailleur went into the back wheel and did quite a lot of damage to about 3 or 4 spokes, and it bent one of them and it scratched up quite bad a number of the others. I trued the wheel up after that and actually it was fine, and it's been fine for about 6 months, but today one finally succumbed to that damage. And I can tell it's that broken one because just where the spoke is necked, it's basically failed or ductile fractured right on that point. So yeah, I put a stress razor into the spoke by damaging it, and that's why it's finally failed. But no, it did really well, even to last that long. So I'm not that experienced at, you know, building or truing wheels or fixing spokes, but there is a bit of a method to it to do it properly. And I'll give you a brief overview. As you can see, this wheel's really out of shape. It's hitting the brakes, it's hitting the chainstay a little bit. On the way home, I actually deflated the tyre almost flat, so if it did rub the chainstay, it didn't damage the chainstay. But what I'm going to do first, rather than just put the new spoke straight in, is undo all the spoke nipples around 2 or 3 turns each, just to relax the wheel, because as you see it here, it's in a really high stress state. Like, there's a lot of deformation in the rim. It's being pulled extremely to one side in one point, and that creates quite a lot of stress on the rim. So I'm going to go around all the nipples, take off a lot of the tension on all of the spokes, just to relax the rim a little bit, because what I don't want to do is put the new spoke in, and if I'm replacing other spokes also, which I am going to do, if I start undoing other spokes when all the other spokes are full tension, the wheel's going to be so out of shape you could potentially yield the rim and put it into plastic deformation. So yeah, relax the wheel, undo the spokes, drop the tensions and everything before you start working on the new spokes. So I'm going to do that now with the Park Tool Black Tool. This works with most DT or Sapim nipples. As you might be able to tell now, I've detensioned the wheel to relax it, and now it's running actually a lot straighter. You can probably hear the nipples inside, so the next job is get the tyre off, rim tape off, get the old nipple out and start putting the new spokes in. Right, here's the broken spoke. Now you can just about see the necked area where it's got longer. It's yielded when the rear neck hit it all those months ago, and it's plastically deformed. Here, you see how it's ever so slightly necked, it's got thinner, and the impact with the mech created a bit of a bend in it, and the bend never came out when I tensioned it back up, probably because it work hardened it a bit and it was too stiff. The bend in it was too stiff, the material was too stiff to even straighten out once the tension was on it, and there's a scuff there from the rear mech when that hit it. So I'm pretty sure this failure was caused by an impact a long time ago, which put a stress razor in the material, and that's why it's failed. But that doesn't matter now because we got some spares. I'm going to replace the broken ones using new nipples as well. I'm going to use brass nipples because they just last longer. Another point actually is I really rate these rims. This is the first time I've had the rim tape off them, and I've ridden about 20,000 kilometers on them in Asia in really humid conditions, and I was expecting to find some white powder on these spoke holes or some corrosion, but there's absolutely none. They're like the day when I bought them. No corrosion whatsoever, no corrosion in the nipple beds. Absolutely spot on, so I really recommend these Archetype rims. They're solid and they're pretty light too. First thing to do when putting the new spoke in is just to respect the lacing pattern. So these are 2 cross, and obviously that spoke is going to be heads out, and then you just need to copy the others if they're going over and under. So heads out spokes on this wheel are under the first cross, over the second cross, and you can actually tell from the fret mark underneath. So if you don't have a special spoke driver tool, don't worry. What you can do is just use the old or broken spoke or a spare spoke, thread it a little way into the back of the nipple, the side that goes into the rim, and then poke that through the nipple hole and down onto the new spoke you've laced. New spoke now has the nipple attached. One thing I forgot to do with this one is put a little bit of lube on the threads. So I'm going to wind it back off a bit, drop a bit of like Teflon based dry lube on there. Now that's not a long-term solution because I don't want them to be lubed long-term. I just want it to be lubed whilst I'm building it and tensioning it, so I don't put too much stress on the threads when I'm going to the high tension first of all, because there'll probably be some microscopic plastic deformation in the threads in the nipple and on the spoke for the first time you do it before the threads work harden. Now what do I mean by work hardening? Well, when you do the spoke up, the threads in the nipple and on the spoke to some extent will change material properties. They'll slightly, ever so slightly yield and become harder. So I want to lube and make that process easy as possible. So I'm going to wind that spoke back off, drop a bit of dry lube on there just to make the tensioning process easier. After I've done that, I'll use a bit of Loctite which will wick down into the thread and set it for good. Not a high strength Loctite, just a sort of medium or low strength one. But there we go, that's one done. I'm going to bring that tension up reasonably low, something like 60 kilos, and then I'll do the next one. But I'm going to bring that one up to match the others first before I take another one out. So there we go, I've just put a bit of magic spoke milk on the thread to let it wick down into the nipple, just to provide some lube whilst I'm chewing it. Now it's not magic milk, it's just any Teflon dry lube. I really don't buy into this spoke prep stuff that it's like God knows how many dollars for a little pot of it. I mean, any sort of liquid lube is going to do just whilst you're working in the threads, because at the end of the day you kind of want the spokes to set and be waterproof, which is why a lot of wheel builders I know use a mild Loctite, because it works really well as a waterproofing agent. Just replacing this one here, look how bent this one was. I've been riding this for about 6,000 kilometers with it like that. It's just a testament to Sapim CX rays. That's really bent when there's no tension on it. But that one probably hasn't failed because this is a leading spoke, which means when you're torquing it from the cassette and you're putting torque in the cassette and power, especially when you're climbing in the big cog at the back and the small chainring, the chain tension's pretty high. This one is actually relaxing, so as you're putting torque on, the tension in this one is going down because it's a leading spoke tangentially. If you look at something like this one, when you're torquing the cassette that way, clockwise, the tension in that one is going up. So if the damage might have been on that one, that one might have failed. This one probably hasn't failed because every time I put torque on, the tension comes down in this leading spoke. Trailing spoke's the opposite. Right, that's 3 spokes replaced in total, the 3 damaged ones. The wheel's hardly got any tension in it and it's a bit wobbly. Now the way I like to true the wheels from basically no tension is you need to first of all do it all uniformly, and then I like to bring the drive side into the right tension. Now why the drive side? Well, the drive side is the kind of critical tension because it's what transfers, well this is up for debate, but this is what transfers the torque, where it sees the torque. No, I'm not going to say that because that's going to cause arguments. It doesn't transfer the torque. Both sides of the hub transfer torque. There, we'll settle the argument. But the drive side is the higher tension because the bracing angle is lower, and it's kind of the most important tension you need to get right. And then what you then do, once you've got that into the right tension, typically around 110 or 120 kilos for these spokes, you then use the non-drive side tension to set the dish of the wheel. So that's the left and right centering of the wheel in the bike. So drive sides I'm going to set first. As I'm bringing up the drive sides, I'm also going to bring these up a little bit as well, the non-drive side, to keep everything kind of balanced. If you go too extreme on the drive side with no tension on the drive side, it starts, you fight a losing battle. So I'm going to start bringing these up with the park tension meter and see where we get with that. So that's more like it. Starting to bring the tensions up now. I reckon I'm around 80 kilos on the drive side. Not touching the non-drive side at all now. And actually, just by doing it by feel, the wheel's pretty true. So hopefully I can keep going in this vein, get these to the right tensions equal, and then it should all sort itself out on its own. And that's a testament to the hub quality and the rim quality and the tolerances of the drillings, if everything remains quite even. But we'll see how it goes. We'll bring the higher end to tension, but as you can see, coming up now, and the wheel is, I haven't even given any regard to the truing of it, and it's not too bad. naturally, as I bring the drive side up, the wheel's going to go this way towards the right chainstay, and but that'll all pull back to the other side when I do the non-drive side. So one thing I find with truing up the wheel from basically no tension at all, if you try and true up the wheel from no tension at all and the wheel is wobbling all over the place, it's very difficult to true it quickly. And a very efficient way of truing it quickly is, if you've got no tension in the wheel or very little tension in the wheel, if the wheel's wobbly, try and straighten it out even though the tensions are way too low. And what that means is that when you do go around bringing up the tensions, you can pretty much do it uniformly and the wheel should stay in true. So let's say you've got 60 kilos in the non-drive side and the wheel is true at 60 kilos, i.e. not very tight. You can then just go around the wheel maybe like half turns or 3/4 of the turns on every nipple on that side, and the wheel will come into tension and stay in true, and you won't have to spend too much time with the wobble. If you try and true a loose wheel that's got a lot of wobble in it, and the tensions are all over the place at the start, it takes a lot longer to balance. So that's it, the wheel's rebuilt with 3 new spokes. It's re-tensioned to the proper tension now. So as I said, I started by setting the drive side tension, and I set this to around 125 kilos. The tension ratio of the drive side to the non-drive side is a function of the flange spacing and the height of the flanges. So you start off by setting your drive side tension, and basically your non-drive side tension follows this. So if your drive side tension is say 120 and your tension ratio is 50%, you need 60 kilos in the non-drive side. And as you're tensioning this side, actually you find that these come into tension anyway. These are much lower tension on hubs because of the greater bracing angle from this side, so you actually need a lower tension to center the wheel. So what is best is you should get as much tension in the drive side as you possibly can, so these come in nice and tight. If these aren't quite tight enough, let's say 100 kilos, and you've got a tension ratio of around 45%, and you've only got 45 kilos in these, and that can easily come loose, and then you start to get wheel wobble and the wheels won't stay true for very long. So getting the drive side as tight as you possibly can go is key. And then yeah, these just follow, it's just a law. So if you've got 120 kilos in here, work out the tension ratio based on the flange widths. There's calculators online to do that, and then it tells you what tension you need to be checking with a tool in the non-drive side. So I'm going to give it a ride tomorrow to settle the wheel, give it some sort of really lean it over and put some power through it, and then I'll take the park tool stuff out with me and I'll check it whilst kind of out on the road, because you know it does need to be settled in and kind of pre-stressed and then trued again. And then I'll probably drop a bit of Loctite in the nipples just to weather seal it. But yeah, if you've got any more questions on wheel truing or wheel building, let me know. Cheers.